Director Adams here. Who else is here? I think it's Director Adams and our fantastic CAT crew, CAT employees here. So let's go ahead and get started with some committee reports to the committee. Faye, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Director Administrator. So what we're going to do is we'll go through the reports to committee, and then as I mentioned to you, when we get to the old new business, I know there's nothing listed there, but Mr. Dumas and I are just going to give you a verbal report, heads up on a fall service change that we're considering right now, and we'll be providing later detail or more details on it later in the month. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our grants planning manager, Ashley Goodrich, to go through the reports to committee. Ashley.
So to talk about our CAT ridership for August, we utilize performance indicators such as passengers per hour, passengers per mile, revenue per passenger, revenue per mile, our fare box recovery ratio, and on-time performance. August performance passengers per hour have increased year over year from August of 2021. We have a grand total of 13.1 passengers per hour system-wide across both core route services and the DOT shuttle. Several of our routes are starting to hit our key performance indicator as approved by the board prior to COVID of 18 passengers per hour. And that would be the Route 4 Abercorn, the Route 3 of Augusta Avenue, and the Route 7 Forsyth. We are continuing to see increases in the 11 Candler, the 10 East Savannah, as well as the 3 West Chatham. Next slide, please. CAT planning items for this month are the CAT Master Transit Comprehensive Plan, as well as our TDP COA operations analysis, and the Mpo Grants submission for a state block grant Y230 and Y301 funds. The Master Transit Plan is starting to kick off through our Nelson Nygaard consulting team. We've been working with communications and operations groups to get started in the month of August, and we'll continue to do so through September.
Actually, let me add to that. We've actually already set our first steering committee meeting and are working for an October date for the first public meeting. That first public meeting too, we're anticipating it's going to be held at a school, one of the public schools here in the area. We wanted to host it in that sort of an environment because why do we do longer range plans? We don't do them for us, we do them for those generations that are coming behind us, so that we leave the community even better. So that would be, we're still working to set the date in October. I think the date for the steering committee kickoff meeting though is included in your snapshot this past Friday. And that kickoff though for the public that we hold at the school will be a very interactive, lively kind of format. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people to engage in fun ways to offer input into the process and really stimulate some great conversations. So we're very excited about it.
Yes, so as we are working with our consultants for the Master Transit Plan, we also are getting started with our TDP COA, and that is with the WRA group out of Atlanta. We have been working with them in tandem with operations, as well as getting them their data needs comprehensively. For us here at CAT and CAT Planning, we have data going back several years in both our APC system as well as our GFI, and we have a variety of other data points that we can provide to them. We're excited about getting that information as well as getting our most up-to-date census data. And a lot of this is in a geographic information analysis, GIS mapping sort of data set technology. An Mpo Grants update with our with the core Mpo is that on August 26th, they announced the 2022 call for projects for Y230 state transportation block grants and Y301 transportation alternative funds. These are funding availability for the next 4 years from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 27. We typically will apply for these funds, and we do receive occasionally some funds from the NPO. The majority of the state block grants are set aside for traditional transportation projects such as roads and bridges, but transit is a component for the Y230. We will follow state of good repair and the fleet replacement schedule for hybrid heavy-duty vehicles pending our SPLOST local match. This application is due at the end of September.
And we've got one. We've got one other slide we want to share with you today. We're going to take a moment to celebrate. There was some information about this included in your recent snapshot, but I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about. Let's scroll back up to the top, please. Thank you. The CAT discretionary competitive grants and earmarks that are currently in play that are active in some fashion. There's a number at the top, the first all the way down through areas of persistent poverty that we are so grateful for the efforts of previous administrations that have brought those grants in. We are very focused, especially with the top three right now, the ferry dock and maintenance facility and the hybrid ferry boats. We are very focused on delivery of those. That's really important, especially when we have a grant that has an older award date and so forth, as some of those do. But we're, again, all credit due to previous administrations in terms of making CAT competitive and bringing those much needed resources in. Starting from the para transit maintenance facility and down through the end of this report, we are very proud and want to celebrate that since January and during this administration, since the beginning of the year and in this administration, we've brought in 12 million, just over 12 million in new grant and funding opportunities that are competitive discretionary opportunities for CAT. It's a remarkable achievement. We're very proud of it. We are now, as we mentioned to you in a previous snapshot, we're going to take a little bit of a step back, hiatus we're calling it, because what we want to do is really focus. And this is for the discretionary competitive opportunities only, not for normal funding type submissions that we need to make. But we're going to do this because we really want to focus deeply on those previous grants that we mentioned that are that have been with us for a bit, making sure that we get those delivered, successfully delivered. Especially, anytime that we have a lag time between grant award and grant delivery, you run the risk of costs going up and all those sorts of things, and we have seen some of that. So we want to get those things delivered and delivered successfully. But we're also keenly focused on making sure that all of these new awards that we have been successful with in these last few months, that we're making sure that those things are entering the stage of readiness and project development so that we deliver them promptly, on time, on budget. And you'll see there everything from paratransit, the paratransit maintenance facility, to ferry investments, to the GDOT track transit signal prioritization, which that one I'm going to point out is 100% funding. It benefits both the city of Savannah in the corridors of Abercorn and Waters, as well as our transit operations there. You see again the EV bus expansion, which we're all very proud of, and additional ferry support. So, and we know that the condition of our ferry fleet is in dire need of modernization, and so we're working diligently to keep the Savannah Bells out there and running for the next couple of years while we're working to advance these projects and get them delivered and get them in service. So, but nonetheless, I think a $12+ million number in this short period of time is something for the board to celebrate and something for our staff to celebrate. As a team, we are really poised for such success. And I'm proud now that we're also going to be equally committed to delivering with high quality.
That really is simply a phenomenal amount of money.
Yes.
Like tied to some very good projects that we really need to accomplish. So yeah, major.
The other kudos that we would be completely remiss. Kudos to our Squire Patton Boggs team that has been so supportive and helpful in this effort. Kudos to Mike Backer in terms of his support on the state side and some of the state activities that we've engaged in, and a special kudos to our congressional delegation, the senators and congressmen and senators in particular that really have pushed hard to get the support to us that we needed for some of these key projects. It's really, there's no doubt that grantsmanship is a team sport. And we have obviously put in very short order a really successful approach together to make sure that we're bringing home needed resources to Chatham County and to CAP so that we can serve our residents and visitors and businesses to the very best of our ability. It's good times. All right. Our next item that I'm going to cover is under old and new business, and it's really, again, this is not an item on the agenda, but it is an item that Mr. Dumas and I wanted to discuss briefly with you. And I will also say before I do this, I want to steal his thunder for a minute. I want to thank Mr. Dumas for his service as interim COO. This will be his last board meeting as interim COO because we have a new COO joining us September 29th. And Mr. Dumas will be going into the interim COO for fixed route operations. And one of the assistant COOs, excuse me. I'm having to steal his thunder because in one of the earlier committee meetings today, he started off talking into how he wasn't going to be here anymore, and it got everybody very agitated. So he was merely trying to say he wasn't going to be continuing in the interim COO role, but so here we are. But we want to thank him for his service and everything he's done to really keep us moving forward during this period of time. So one of the things that you will see that we are going to present on in the board meeting and talk a bit about is, we continue to experience the operator shortages that are also present with lots of other transit systems across the country. I think this is really a unique time. So you've got the situation where there was already starting to be a little bit of a change in the dynamic of the market with Uber, Lyft, and those kinds of services, that operators could find things that they could do that would be much more flexible. If you're a Uber or Lyft driver, you can kind of come into the system and come out of the system as you need and desire to, and work it very flexibly around your life. So you already had a new service in the market that also had an operators type component to it, or a driver's type component to it. And then the pandemic hit. And of course, that also had not only a dramatic impact, excuse me, on operations and so forth, but a dramatic impact on the labor market. And we have continued to see that impact even as we're moving out of what are those most dire COVID conditions that we all experienced over the last several years. Because what has happened is people started during that period of time, and this is a documented phenomenon across the country, people started rethinking their careers. They started thinking about flexibility. They started thinking about, did they really still want to do what they had been doing? And so those shortages of operators that really grew over that period of time are persisting and staying with us. We oftentimes have folks who come in for the interviews, and the first thing they want to talk about is flexibility. And as you know, we're providing a service that, it's especially fixed route. We've got to be there when we've got to be there and serve it from the places that we need to serve it. So I say all of that because one of the things that we reflect upon right now is, as we continue to experience this operator shortage, we're doing a couple of things with it. The first is we have reached out to the Department of Labor, and we were so fortunate for them to extend a program to us that is very unusual for it to be offered in an organization like ours. And it's called their business services, customized business services recruitment. And so literally what they're doing is they are providing us free of charge, because it's the state is paying for it. They're providing us free of charge the kind of recruitment services that we typically pay for, but for every and any kind of position. And there are places and venues and portals and so forth, employer relationships that they have that we simply don't, because this is what they do all the time. And so they're working with us to do everything from post job openings. They're reviewing our job openings to make sure that we're consistent with what we've posted and what we've got out there that they're recruiting for. They can host virtual hiring events for us. We know that the traditional job fairs really don't work that well anymore, but some of these virtual hiring events can be successful. They're screening the applicant resumes for us and sending them over. It is a phenomenally valuable program. And it's really just getting put in place. And just last week, Ms. Cutter had reported out that in 1 week, and this was really their first week of actually recruiting, we really got the whole program in place and they started actively recruiting for us. We got 15 applicants last week for all different kinds of positions. We haven't seen 15 applicants in a single week in like forever. So it was very exciting. We understand that this partnership with them is going to be, I think, very successful for us. And I think we've given them a priority around operators. So all of that is underway. But even while that is underway, one of the things we have is we have a real issue right now with service reliability. It is largely a product of that lack of operators or operator shortage. And then there's also other factors that play into that, but that's really the biggest one. And so we have a lot of missed trips. And in areas where we have double-digit missed trips, we want to really be looking at those carefully because our service levels of performance also ultimately can impact our federal funding that comes to us. So it's really important that we address this in a very prompt manner. That said, we have our own transit service guidelines, but in addition to that, the FTA regulations around service changes and so forth are ones that we carefully looked at. And the FTA regulations provide for what's called a temporary service change. We have done temporary service changes here at Chatham Area Transit in the past. Obviously not necessarily, I think mostly it was during COVID perhaps. But one of the things about temporary service changes is that the regular processes, the Title VI, the equity analysis, the public meetings and so forth, and the advance notice of all those things are not required because it's understood that you're doing something. Think of it more as a pilot. It can't actually be a pilot, but it's a temporary service change where you're trying something out to address a particular need, issue, problem, whatever it might be. So we've been doing a really thorough scrub using the expertise of our staff and the expertise of the consultants with WRA that are working on our comprehensive operational analysis. And we are, by the end of the month, by the board meeting, we're going to be presenting to you on what we're finding, and we are going to be suggesting to you a fall service change, a temporary service change that will be put in place to bring the reliability of our service back into a good posture. And how will we do that? Well, in effect, what we'll be doing is we'll be taking how many operators do we have, how many people are able to engage, and what service level can we support with that level of staff? That's really very simply put what it will be. It will likely, and Mr. Dimas will tell you about this a little bit more, it will likely mostly impact probably Saturday service, but there will be some impacts and you will likely hear about them. Even though there are not the typical requirements around Title VI, equity, public meetings, and all that sort of thing, one of the things that we've already been coordinating with FTA around this proposal. And one of the things that we have committed and we are going to do because we think it's the right thing to do is our communications team will be developing a rigorous outreach effort so that we make sure that the public knows exactly in advance what's going to be happening, where it's going to be happening, and the anticipated duration of this, which we think will be about maybe 6 months. Could be less if our hiring really starts to boost and we can begin to add back in. And then the other thing is that we will be from beginning to completion of this time frame of temporary service modification. We'll be documenting every single thing we do, why we do it, where we're doing it, how we're doing it, and so forth, so that when we come around to times for regular reviews and explaining, both being accountable for what we're doing, we've got all of that record of our activity. We're going to be working closely with you as a board. We're going to be working closely with the community. We're going to be working closely with FDA. And we know that this is the right thing to do to address the situation that we've got, because the unreliability of service is something that is incredibly frustrating to our passengers right now. We want to correct that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dumas. He's going to talk to you a little bit more about this. And then again, we'll look forward to, once we've really gotten down to the nuts and bolts of our recommendation, by the board meeting at the end of the month, we'll be presenting in real detail to you. Mr. Dumas.
Good evening, and thank you. Ms. Massimo has covered most of what we wanted to discuss, and that is that the service reduction that we're looking to implement early November, around the 1st of November. And again, it's driven based on the number of operators that we currently have, and the service that we're doing now, we're not meeting that expectation because we have more service than we have drivers. So the intent is to give the best possible solution to service that we can handle, and customers are able to kind of relying on that because of the fact that we're reducing it back to an amount that we can also build some kind of protection, what we call the extra core. That means operators available to us that can step in when there's a call out, when there's an individual cannot show up to work. We don't have that protection right now, and it's because of our service level. So the greatest impact that you would notice on that, the weekday will be some modification, but Saturday will probably be the day of the week that you'll see the greatest impact. We currently do about 80% of our weekday service on a Saturday now, and we know that there's some overlapping services already occurring. So you'll see some reduction on Saturday. You'll see some adjustment on Sunday as well, but we will still provide service 7 days a week. So the goal is not to eliminate any particular day of service right now, but to reduce it to the point that we can cover that service level, and customers will be able to know this based on an effort between planning and communication of consultant to make sure that that information is put out there and it is updated as necessary. So as was said, this will be ongoing. It won't be like we just put it out there in the communication. It will be weekly, daily, monthly, making sure that the public knows exactly what we're doing.
And again, because it is exempt from typical requirements, because it is temporary, we are, though, very mindful in our community of anything that can impose an equity impact. So again, even as we're continuing all that documentation, all that communication that will be key to this as we weather through this moment, we'll also be assessing for any equity impacts that can occur, and we'll be prepared to mitigate, minimize, ensure that we're keeping up with that. And again, our expectation is this is a temporary service modification. It will last for a short period of time, relatively speaking, and that as that hiring, which we've already engaged a very aggressive approach to, is that hiring begins to overcome that, and other things that we may be able to do during that period of time overcomes this missed trips and unreliability issue we have. We will begin to bring that service back. And not only that, prime time to do this, because we've also got the comprehensive operational analysis that you heard Ashley discuss earlier ongoing right now. We've got an extraordinary amount of expertise that deepens our bench to really be able to look at these things carefully and to make sure that what we do with the service modification is carried forward and considered in how we're bringing service back, and further bringing it into that master transit plan of where are we going in the future and how do we want to build the most effective system of service that operates at a highly reliable level. So we appreciated the moment to be able to share that with you today. And again, we'll have more of the specifics, the nuts and bolts, if you will, at the meeting later in the month. And we'll also have our consultant from WRA on hand at that meeting to talk through the analysis that we're performing now to figure out exactly what is the right thing to do here to bring that reliability back into our system. But we welcome any questions or comments you may have.
One comment I've got is that it seems that there's two ways of I guess the analogy works best sort of in kind of in a negative way, but there's two ways of stranding people when we do make service changes. We can strand people either in space or in time. And when we strand people in space, that means that we're not providing service to specific areas. And when we strand people in time, that means that we're not providing service to specific times. And so I wonder, when we're making changes to the time side of it, that does affect all routes, I'm guessing, and inform me if I've got this mistaken, but if we are making changes to all routes, then that's also changing some of our most heavily ridden and heavily used routes. And so, and again, I'm just, you guys know the details, but I do want to just bring this up as a point of a conversation. At what point do we have sort of the routes that we don't want to do that to? We don't really want to, Route 14 is just booming. Do we want to be cutting back on that now, while at the same time not cutting back so much on some of our very, very low ridden routes? And I think that's just a conversation about values that, we might want to consider, is how do you reduce service in the most equitable way? But I also am very, very glad that we are taking steps to create more resilient service. It is beyond frustrating when we have such a fragile system. Same with the airlines right now. So I'm hugely in benefit of that. It's just, how do we make those always tough decisions about reducing service, either in space or in time?
So Director Clinton, I hope that this will actually offer you some assurance. I think those are excellent questions, and the way that you describe it is also, I always appreciate that, because I think it's the way that many of our listeners today, folks who are joining us from the public, will be thinking about it as well. You've always put that out there in such a straightforward and eloquent way. I think it helps that you're giving us the questions others would ask. So there's a couple things I would say to that. One is, it will not, while you're looking at this system-wide, the focus is on the areas where we have double-digit missed trips. So in other words, there's already such an issue there that the unreliability is so high that you're already affecting people, I would suggest to you, in both time and space. And so it's that notion of that's what you may be looking to trade off in order to ensure that the most reliable and the most and also well-used pieces of our system are preserved is not the right word, but you know what I mean? That's where we're focusing our attention right now. While we're never losing sight, keep in mind, I keep on stressing, this is a temporary service modification as provided for under the federal regulations. It will not be for an extended period of time. It will be for the period of time that we need to be able to roll our sleeves up and work on the issue at hand. And the real issue at hand and the tools that we're bringing to it is this operator shortage. So, Mr. Dumas, did I put that fairly well?
You did, and part of that is also collecting the data based on ridership and numbers that we see. So we're going to take all those factors in and make this determination. Some routes, I can tell you, that because of where they are, they won't be impacted. They won't change. It won't improve, but it won't reduce.
So again, it's going to be in areas where the missed trips are already so high. And as Mr. Dennis said earlier, it's likely, based upon this preliminary look that we've done, it's likely to impact Saturdays more than other days. But again, we're still deep into really scrubbing this analysis in huge detail between planning, operations, and the expertise of our WRA team that's performing our comprehensive operational analysis. They are really, even just the analysis that they've already done, they've so deepened our bench strength and capabilities and what we can really get to and understand effectively. So what we bring forward to you, we believe will be a really good decision and the right decision, but even so, the reason we want to go ahead and start talking to you about it in committees is because we know anytime you make these kinds of changes, there will be reaction to it. There will be some reaction to it, and we want to be sure that you're along the journey with us all the way as we consider this and so forth. And even though the regular processes don't apply, we're still going to continue to make sure that we have, frankly, a better, because it'll be a nearly daily communication strategy that supports exactly what we're doing while we're doing it. We will, the customer experience piece really amped up during this period of time until it settles in a little bit and everybody gets used to it while we're testing it out. And then again, hopefully what we'll see is that our recruitment efforts are really going to pay off, and we're going to be able to pretty quickly begin to add back, and also to help figure out through the use or through the study of the comprehensive operational analysis and the master transit plan, figure out where is our best, most reliable, most productive, deepest penetration system for the future. So, any other questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We appreciate it. I'll also just run through the other proposed business for action by other committees that you will hear about when we get to the full board meeting. You can see it on your agenda. In the service delivery operational committee, we discussed some additional information around the COVID-19 emergency measures and sort of what's the current status of that. Hours of service policy for fixed and paratransit operators. This is the operation, the numbers of hours in a day that an operator can actually drive or perform versus their overall service time. It's 10 hours, I think, on the road. Mr. Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 hours on the road, but 12 hours total. And that is, we checked that consistent with what are our peers doing in the state. And also this is a state of Georgia law around driver safety and so forth as well. So we're bringing that into play. The Operation Command Center bus conversion, I know Director Adams has already had a sneak peek a little bit into that conversation with his participation in our active shooter activity a few weeks back. Our coordination with Savannah PD, as well as other public safety officials, the notion of taking one of our buses that we're going to be retiring anyway and sort of stripping it out and turning it into a mobile command center that can be used effectively during a weather emergency or during some sort of any other kind of incident management that may be necessary, to be able to pair that effectively with the mobile command centers of public safety. It seems like a really extraordinary opportunity for us. So we're going to be talking about that. Under financial services and audit compliance, there's a change order related to Clever Devices. There is a RFP issuance on occupational health services, and then the Mary Musgrove drive system repair ratification. And then in executive governance, we will be discussing the 35th anniversary of CAT this year, and we'll be proposing a reduced fare days for your consideration to honor and celebrate during that time. With that, we welcome any other comments or questions that you might have, and I'll turn it back over to you, Director Administrator, for adjournment.
Let's see. All right, let me scroll back to the top of this agenda. All right, great. Okay. Is there anything else? Director Adams, do you have any questions?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right. I'd just like to thank you guys again for a great meeting. Always informative. I would also like to give a shout out to everybody who works on these reports. I found the colors of the graph to be absolutely on point. I know I'm a stickler on that, and I hope there aren't any horrible jokes behind my back, but if there are, it's worth it. It's looking really, really nice. It's a joy to read. And that's got to be something for a report like this. If there's anything else, let me know. But without any further ado, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you both.
Of course. We'll see y'all later.
All right.